Oh, it doesn't do anything in the back. Okay, I'm going to try and do so. I still could use a light, but I heard that. Pyramid Power, the update, and that's pretty much the secrets of the Great Pyramid update, is going to take you tonight into some very interesting realms. How far we go with that after the initial setup of what Pyramid Power is and about the Great Pyramid will be up to you. I will take it into certain realms if during the question and answer session, and I always offer that when I give a lecture because I don't feel you should present a lot of information and then run away. Don't run away. I take all the challenges or try to have people make comments if you choose. So there will be, if not an extensive, at least some question and answer session. Let me also say that I received a number of calls, thank you, in Chicago at the center. And they tried to delineate who wanted consultations and who didn't. Well, that has not been solved. So I have a clipboard here. If you want the consultation, and hopefully it will be tomorrow, then please sign this sheet before you leave. If it is for other purposes, then sign it, but don't put a check mark. When I see a check mark, it will be for those who want consultations. I have 5 people already who are pretty much permanently fixtured for tomorrow. And we still, sorry again, don't have a location. We're thinking of the Regis Hotel. But until that is verified, you probably can't begin to see people there until noon. That will be open. So your phone number on here will be very important. I'm saying all of this because once I get into a subject, I forget. I get into it very deeply. So these are the things that you may want to know at the beginning. Let's see. There's something else I was asked to mention, and it's in my social data. Pyramids and pyramid power. When you think of pyramids, you already think, of course, a place called Africa. And up in that northwest corner, you think of a place that is known as the Giza Plateau. I doubt if there's anyone in here that has never heard of pyramids or pyramid power and the pharaohs and Egypt and Nubia and all of the concepts that go along with it. But I like to start this way by saying again that on the continent of Kemet or Ka, or various names like Ibuland, whatever you will, at a latitude 29 degrees, 58 feet, 51 inches north, at a longitude 31 degrees, 9 feet east, on the exact intersection of the 31st meridian Greenwich time, for those of you who are latitudinal and longitudinal experts, you find what I consider to be the wonder of this planet. And it is really a token to the grandeur of this planet and some of the intelligent life forms that have been on it and hopefully are still on it, right? Right. Okay. On the continent of Africa, in the country of Egypt, midway between Memphis and Alexandria, all located within the province of which is called Giza, which is near the city of Cairo. And a midway point between Upper and Lower Egypt, bordering on the rich cultivated land in the valley, standing near the eastern edge of a particular desert, stands the wonder of all worlds. Anybody know the eastern edge of what desert this wonder is located? Sahara. How many say Sahara? Let me see your hand. You're wrong. Now you say, oh, I'm not wrong, you're wrong. Mister, what do you mean telling me I'm wrong? Well, the Sahara has enroached on this wonderful continent of Africa. It used to be the Libyan desert that it was built upon. But the enroaching Sahara, you have sand. Sand doesn't ask you a name. Sand goes where it wants to go. One of the challenges of Africa, or Kemet, or Capri, or Ibuland, or whichever you would, is these desert areas, the Kalahari on, that are enroaching. And now those two deserts have come together, which now gives us, or should have given, the topographers and the archaeologists a key. Were they open-minded? The fact that now those deserts are one, but it didn't seem to faze them along with their potential type of understanding about what the Great Pyramid is. This particular wonder has been studied and researched, and a lot of information is given upon it. Some of the information properties. It covers over 13 acres on a plateau that it has made a lot of basalt because it's not too far out from the Nile River, if you will. That it is an equilateral triangle that it soars some 481 feet to the air with 4 sides at the base and is 750 feet long. And the distance between the top and the corner, what they call the apex and one corner again, is the same as the base, which means it is a perfect equilateral triangle, 4-sided wonder, if you will. It weighs close to 6 million tons and is composed of 2,500,000 blocks of stone. I'd like to stop with that because when you say 2,500,000 blocks of stone, we may think about the bricks that we see our buildings built of, or we may think of a big concrete pillar, but these blocks of stones are very interesting because of the 2,500,000 blocks that compose this pyramid structure. The smallest one weighs 3 3/4 tons. Now, you can begin to say that's good, but I like to have people identify. When you use your minds, when you think, when you fantasize, when you get into something, it has more potential for you. I like to get the idea. Let's just say a small car. Most cars now are getting to be pretty big once again. A small car, some of the fellas or some of the young ladies, sisters, brothers, tell me what you think a small car would weigh. Pull the text as you're running on the street now. Give me a name of a car, how much you think it would. 1.5. Which car is that name? Okay. Sable, okay. Give me another car, someone.
5,000.
Pardon?
About 5,000.
About 5,000 pounds or tons? Pounds? Okay. Another guess, one of the others here. Let me get an idea what you think a car weighs. One more, come on. Somebody, let me hear a man.
A Ram truck weighs about 2 tons.
All right. How many? 2 tons. That means that the smallest brick stone, whatever you want to call it, in the Great Pyramid, weighs as much as what kind of a truck?
A Ram truck.
Ram's truck. 2 tons. Right? It weighs more than that. Now keep that in mind when you understand that close to 1.5 million of them are the size of Ram trucks, the weight of Ram trucks. You start talking about now the stones in the Great Pyramid. 1.5 million Ram trucks weighted in there. When we begin to look at it even further, that means that some of these stones that are used there, if you want to call them stones, weigh 100 tons. Now you're talking about an airplane. You're talking about an airplane with full cargo and passengers on board. And when you begin to talk about that and you start thinking that maybe 50 of them weigh that, you got really a tremendous item here. So let's move even further. In the King's Chamber and laying on an angle up the Grand Gallery and in what is called the Queen's Chamber, these are names that have been given, you have stone granite structures that weigh close to 300 tons each. 300 tons each. Use your imagination now. Just went to the Ram truck where they just counted. Now we got 10 or so things weighing 300 tons each, made of granite, one of the hardest substances known to man. When we look even further on with this, we find that they say it was between 2,686 BC and 2,181 BC that this structure was built. And mind these figures now. And that it was built for a pharaoh who utilized 100,000 slaves working night and day for 20 years to get it erected. And once it was erected there, of course, he was buried. Now, before we get into the story of the burial, the story of all of this, I don't want to skim over anything, because when I take you on this way out trip, you're going to be hopefully going with me this evening. I want the groundwork to have been laid, so you don't say, well, you skimmed over the heavy part, you got into the esoteric metaphysical mess, but you didn't handle the details. Stay with me, we will handle the details. Okay? Let's question one of the details right quickly. Usually in the movie by Gerald Zelnick or C.C.B. DeMille, J.R. Rank, all deceased gratefully now, they began to, you heard that? You already? They began to set off a movie by which Yul Brynner and Charlton Heston are sitting up there, the Pharaoh and his first mate, the gendarme, whoever the general is. And in the distance, they're building the Great Pyramid structure. And as they build it in the distance, they're talking about who they're going to conquer and what women they're going to have and how much money they're going to bring back to Egypt. And then zoom, Charlton Heston's off making money, women, and whatever else they're going to do. And he comes back, of course, when he comes back to Egypt, the wonder of wonders is already built. There in the distance is a pyramid. Wouldn't it be nice if that's all that you really had to do? You talk about it, you go off and do what you got to do, you come back, look the same age, and there it stands the Great Pyramid. That always amazed me, but I said, well, they are the right to put in the money so they can do what they want to do. And that same kind of thought process I find is entered into the so-called professors in these colleges, universities, and teachers in high schools. Hope I'm not talking like that. For your teaching and saying the same thing that those producers of the movie said, and in those encyclopedias and books is the same kind of printed information. And choose that word carefully. Information about the Great Pyramid. 100,000 slaves working 90 days for the Great Pharaoh to be buried there again, so many feet on a plateau. When we move further with that, though, we have to begin to question this plateau, these builders, and the like. First of all, they show that the pyramid is built up of these big slabs of stone. Now, we just named 2,500,000 of them. 3 3/4 all the way down to 300-ton megaliths. I don't even know what you call it. And some of them, hear me well, are composed of solid granite. Now, my history and my research shows me that granite is composed of compressed igneous rock, which means that you take the regular rock you have, and then you have to really pack it. You have to put weight on that thing. And granite is usually found under mountain ranges. Hear me well. There is usually no force known to human here that can compress rock like that, except for lengths of time when rocks and mountains and so have built up upon this rock to make it like this. It breaks diamond drills at times. That's how tight we compress that rock is. Now, I asked, where did they get the rock to build the Great Pyramid? Gus scholars say, well, they got it from basalt, because a lot of that pyramid is basalt. Not a lot. Some of that pyramid is basalt. There are a lot of little pyramids at the foot there on that plateau that were obviously not composed in the same manner, don't show the same geometric understanding, and are not showing the same kind of architecture. Nor is all of that pyramid made of basalt, or that completely. And the basalt that they may find around there, where they say, well, they can show excavation sites and they have other things, you find that that was done after Napoleon was there. It was done by the French also in 1908, and many other things about that don't make sense the way that they spell it out in the encyclopedias and in the dictionary. But let's go on with that. Let's just let all the basalt be. But now let's go for the granite. We'll go for the jugular real quickly here. Where did they get the granite from? Now, Africa is not known for mountain ranges. There are 13 of them, as I understand. But the closest one, and I assume that at the time they built it, they go to the closest one, around there, is close to 1,100 miles away. I don't know what may be deep under the ground there, but I don't think those slaves were digging too far deep under the ground there. So they'd probably go to where they could find the best granite possible at the shortest distance. They found it, and they poured it. But how did they get it to the site? And how did they quarry something that diamond drills and bits and pylons and all type of excavating equipment now couldn't do? They asked Gus K. Newberg, and I'm from Chicago, and that area, he's one of the biggest, oldest contractors, you know, one of the old gentlemen there. And he said he would take on the job. Now, this is back 2,686 BC, and according to the history they're teaching you, they had flintstones, they had some copper, a little gold, but they weren't doing anything to extricate a granite structure weighing 300 pounds out of a solid mountain underneath it. I don't even want to talk about the 15 that comprise the king and the queen. I don't want to know about one. Well, how did they get one to that site? And then get it up off the ground and inside 1/4 way up on a structure weighing 6 million tons and 2,500,000 composition blocks. And they have smaller weights underneath that big weight. And I would love for somebody, no, I don't want you to stay around trying to hem and haw all that time. Don't tell me how it was done. You think about how it was done, because I don't know how it was done based on what they've told me. And they have these granite giants right there. How did they get them? Oh, but I do want you to solve one problem for me. How many men, slaves, or whatever they used, did it take to cut the rocks and bring them, 2,500,000 of them now, to that site? How many of the 100,000 would you use for that? Let me get 3 guesses again. I hope the fellows speak up this time. How many of the would you use them? How many slaves? Now you got 100,000. How many did you commit to moving and pouring 2,500,000 blocks of snow? All of them? Okay, well, let's just say, maybe 100. Maybe 100 of them? Yeah, you're as facetious as I am, right? All right, how many say all of them you commit to that job? How many say half of them you commit to that job? How many say, I don't know, let's get on with the whole lecture? We'll get on with the whole lecture. But remember, you got 100,000 slaves. When you see them in the movies, these stones, again, are resting on something that they can pull along. I have a blackboard here, and I don't want to write on something I shouldn't be writing on. But imagine in your mind, you have all of these 2,500,000 stones, or bricks, or whatever you want to call it, that you've got to move to a site. And they usually are on logs. Aren't you? They're on these logs, and they're moving along on these logs. Now, I'm sometimes not too bright. I do the best I can with what I have. Always need more. And I looked at this and I said, now logs to me mean wood. Wood to me means trees. And trees to me means hardwood, sequoia, redwood, things like this. And I said, boy, Kafir, Akibuland, Egypt, Africa is noted for sequoia and redwoods and hardwoods. Look like I'm in Canada, right? What are you laughing at? Isn't it known for that? Well, I didn't know that at the time, so I went research because that's what my professors and teachers told me. So I figured they told me and what? It had to be right? Because I've been there for education, right? And they're educated, right? So my education let me go and look again, and I found out that they didn't have anything like that over in Africa. That they had cycas, palm. What's some other? Did somebody help me? Well, now you had to go and spot. You used intelligence there. That's what you used intelligence. I found that the hardest wood in Africa was mahogany. And I found mahogany didn't grow all over Africa. There was a central area in the Congo. And I started saying, Congo here, Egypt here. And I said, boy, like that, Little Chihuahua set up the commercial. I guess I get a bigger box. Because something wasn't right there to get that stuff from one place to the other. And I said, how many men did they commit to felling and quarrying trees, cutting down? In fact, they have what they call a forestry project. Because to move 2,500,000 boxes of stone, the smallest one weighing 3 3/4 tons, like that, when you told me had a ram truck, ram trucks we got to move now. How many logs do you think it took? And while we're thinking about that, understand that the unique thing about trees, they have limbs and branches. And if they don't have a lot of limbs and branches, they have at least a truncation. They bend over, and they do have something that goes on top, especially like with a palm. Okay? So not only do you have to axe the tree down, because they didn't have pneumatic drills and saws, you got to axe it down. They say axe it down. They say axe it down. And then you had to trim it, and then you had to get it to the site. How many men did that take? Those of you commit your 100,000 men, you can't go. You're out of it. Man, you're fired. You're foreman, you're gone. How many more men now are we going to commit to that? Well, while you're pondering on that one, let's get to another one. They are usually in the movies and in the books pulling these bricks and stone. And some, of course, with these other laws are pushing, oh, look at me like that, pushing these bricks and stone. Okay? Now we're pushing this all up to the job site. What are they pulling it with? Hemp rope. Is that man money? Not mine. Is that man money? Okay? Hemp rope. Hemp rope. Think about what you just said. Hemp rope. How much rope do you think it's going to take? What are you laughing about? You're laughing at me. I don't like that. I'm not a comedian. I'm telling you historical facts like they do in the colleges and universities. And if they are the rank and Delbert, they can make movies of it that you bought. So the kids buy. So the wrong other kind of kids buy. How much rope? Hemp through a process called wetling. And usually it has a tuber-seeking vine that seeks water. And here's a desert area now. What's the name of that desert, by the way? Oh, you with me? You're with me? Now, here's this tuber-seeking water vine that you have to dig up, chop off, and then let dry out, and through a process called wetling. Encyclopedia got the whole thing on wetling. And you got to chop it, and you beat that, and nobody's breaking into my house. I'm not hitting it. They're just breaking off all of these little pieces. And then you re-wet them, and before they dry, you weave them together to form rope. How many people you say were engaged in that? We got how many slaves we're using now? 100,000. We've got them committed to brick laying, quarrying, wood cutting, and forestry. And I figured one way they did too. What they probably did, they knew, because the Moors, they said, were very ancient people, so maybe they're more ancient than we thought. They knew about America, and they flew over there, and they went to Canada and Washington, and they got them back, and they dropped it down. And they floated, or else they floated across the ocean. I thought about that, but it seemed like it was kind of far-fetched. How does that feel to you? So now we got to go back to our last problem here again. What are we talking about now? The rope. The rope. As you're figuring that one out, remember, they're building this now on a desert. A desert is made of what?
Sand.
Everybody knows. If you're going to build the Regent's Hotel, if you're going to build the Empire State Building, if you're going to build the strongest, heaviest structure known to man on this planet, you build it on sand, right? Every architect, engineer, anybody knows, you always build a structure like that on sand. Because sand shifts, it displaces, and that's what you really have fun with. You build it on sand. Man, I want to build this thing on sand yesterday, right? Down payment first, $1 billion, and then we talk. Why did they build it on sand? And if they built it on sand, how did they stop it from shifting? Now I know why the deserts moved. Or they said, boom, and all the sand ran over this way and all the sand ran over this way. Have you ever walked in sand? Isn't that fun? For about the first hour and a half mile. That was good hot. You know, they got a commercial out with all the weightlifters running on the stage. They said, oh my God, you know, not only will it burn the heck out of your feet and any other thing you put up there since it's been that long, but it moves. And the hardest thing in the world to walk on is sand. Now, they're not walking on the sand. They are pulling. They are pushing. They are cutting, building, cursing, and sweating. We wouldn't talk about that. And then they want a union, and then they retired, and then they died. They last out there 1 week. Another thing about deserts, I found out deserts have something called sandstone. It seems to be notorious for it certain seasons. It might be one every day for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. Have you ever seen a facing of a building when they're trying to clean it? They use sandblasting. You ever seen sandblasting operation? That current or that air moves at 80 to 115 miles an hour. Sandstorms double that. They can go anywhere from 80 to 250 miles an hour. How did they work during the sandstorm season? That is a fair question, don't you think? They built it on the desert. She should be the military. I was writing. My professor said how they did it. I said, you got downtime. I'm not going to work in something moving 200 miles an hour for you or anybody else. I quit. Well, if I can't quit, I'm going to lay down on this job, literally, and try to breathe. In 20 years' time, how much downtime do you think they had for sand? So they didn't use the full 20 years to build it. Okay? And of course, the poor feet, they had blisters, and this is where Dr. Scholl's and all the footpaths came, and that's why we had magnets now, because we said we got to do something with the feet. People know about their feet. Feet hurt. Yeah. And feet hurt if you work that hard, with bunions and all like that. Have I desecrated that temple testimony that said it was built by 100,000 slaves yet? Or do I need to go over this and bore you some more? Why don't they ask these kind of questions in school, and why do they allow to teach your kids that way? Why do you believe it?
Really? Really?
That's the question, because you're intelligent. That's why you want me to move on with other things. No need to move on to esoteric things when everything you've been told is esoteric. What a bigger fairy tale than you want. Without question.
Go ahead.
Don't get angry with me for pointing it out to you. Say, I'm glad he did, and I broke it down so I would think. Because when you think, you're dangerous. Think, you're dangerous. You might smile, but you're still thinking. Nobody knows what you're thinking while you're smiling. That's dangerous. They then said, and I was going to skip a lot of boring details because I got them all laid out. But I will say some of the things that they did say about it after that. They said it was built, of course, for the great Pharaoh. What's the name of the Pharaoh they built this for? He did it so you'd always remember it. Ramesses. Yeah. Which one was it? Papa. Interesting. One man buried there, and everybody knows him because that's why he's famous for being buried. Here I have an Afrocentric consciousness group, and you tell me 5 names already. Okay? Well, don't feel bad. They intended for it to be that way. Once they got to the pyramid, those later on who came there to try and explore it, to find out what was happening in it, they tried to find the entranceway for it. They had a hard time because they never found an entranceway at the base. They went 40 feet up. And some slaves, all these slaves or workmen there doing something, whatever they were doing there, was considered the Egyptian government there. Again, kind of cantilevered backwards and set backwards and found something seemed to move. And to make a long story short, they found an entrance to the Great Pyramid 40 feet up from the base, and a stone moved. Some kind of engineering marvel, and this is where they finally found it. And then, before that time, they had used TNT and blasted at the base. They'd done everything trying to get in there. But once they got in there, they made their way immediately to the king's chamber to find the great Pharaoh. And of course, once they went in there, and they found what Pharaoh again? What Pharaoh did they find? Who? Ramses. The lady that said, the sister that said, the beautiful person that said none was right. They found the mystery of the empty tomb. All of this building He worked these guys like mad. They quit on him. He was hated and cursed, and he forgot to be buried. All of that trouble, he forgot to be buried there, or his men were so angry with him, after he died, they said, forget him, we're going to bury him someplace nobody ever find him. They found the mystery of what? The empty tomb, the open sepulcher. They stated, however, that his name was Khufu. And the Greeks couldn't pronounce very well. I get tongue-tied a lot. So they said Cheops. Don't ask me how Khufu became Cheops, but that's what it did. And so Cheops Khufu was buried there, but he wasn't. Are you still with me? You better watch me. You stay with me, you're going to get kind of messed up. So I'm going to tell you. But you are still with me. Going slow enough. Good. All of this goes on to then find that at the Pyramid Giza site, there is not one pyramid, but 5. And really, 55. How do I get these figures? You got your big 3. Everybody sees that in movies when you travel along. By the way, what are the names of the pharaohs buried in the 2 flanking pyramids that Khufu forgot to be in? Tut? Who? Kappa? These people over here, I gotta watch them. We can't tell us. I don't want to talk to you. Tell us. Just blow my whole game. All right, you're right. Let's not go further because you already answered it. Khufu was on one side, Khafre was on the other side, which they later on in Greece they didn't call it Shepherds. Don't ask me how Khafre became Shepherds. I guess they said Shepherds for my money, but they can't give you a Khafre. No. That didn't come out right either. But then on the other side, they have what they call King Mankure, or we call it Mankura. He's probably right. And the Greeks called him Mycerinus. Never did anything to the Greeks. We study classical Greek history, don't we? Yeah, okay. So here are these 3 things laid out. Khufu, Khafre, and what do you call it? Ankara? Ankara. All right. There they are. They found a body of an Arab in Mankara's tomb. They haven't found any bodies except for a back or something in the other one, and they don't even like to talk about what they call the unclassified pyramids, because what they did find in there was so astounding. Nobody seems to want to back them in the corner about what the heck is in this other pyramid. And they don't even talk about the 2 around the bend, pointing the way toward Luxor. And they talk about the 55 outside, which anybody can see was built after that with less skilled labor. If they didn't have 100,000 men winning a fight like that later. And then it wasn't even built to the same subject. That's where you get your base off. The games that they play with the human mind and man's mind are interesting to me. But yet we seem to fall victim to all of that foolishness. They had one other thing. I got to throw this in too. The Appalachians based on very well. There was a big argument with Sir Francis Petrie and some of the other, Basil Davidson, and there was Robert Menzies, and they had these practical British people who, British, if you're British, you just know. You know if you're British. If you're British, you tell people how things are done, and people listen. Because Britons know. And these Britons knew this. They knew that whoever built these pyramids was a mathematical genius. Wow. And they knew that if they were mathematical geniuses, they had to use a special type of measurement. Woo! And they know the special type of measurement was the British pyramid inch. They knew. And so did. And so it is in your books. And there's a big argument. I'm serious. There was a big argument in Parliament and in the Congress of the United States. You know, the United States has always lived up to the British anyway, because they came from Newgate, Marshalsea prison. Whatever Britain said the United States is going to do, that's still happening. You're not laughing. I'm laughing. That's still happening. Because they don't think that anybody over here is worth anything. The scum is over here. So When the British said it was the British pyramids, all the American schools went around trying to find out what it was. And then finally the British told them. They said that the British pyramids, the special unit of measurement, all through here, is 11 10,000ths of an inch shorter than the American. He said, don't wander away. I'm going to come back. I'm going to come back. I had to get away. It got hot there. 11 10,000ths of an inch. Somebody figure out for me 11 10,000ths of an inch different from the American inch. But don't spend too much time because I think you're nuts if you do. 11 10,000ths of an inch. That's what they debated in Congress and Parliament about. Was the American inch that built the construction site there and all the things, or whether it was I can't take the conclusions any longer. But look at it as just that. Something that people trying to please people, trying to be respected, and trying to not be ignorant have accepted, which any child could see was wrong. But to question the pompous, egotistical, people who started talking like that was to not get tenures, was to not pass your exams, and plus the fact, I won't say you worshiped them, but you respected them as much as everybody else did. And you bought all of them. I could go on with this part of it for another half an hour. I will spare you. What I will say, however, is this. Scientists now and destiny whisper that the great Giza pyramid may have been built a long time ago, past 2,686 BC. They're saying that it might have been built a long time ago before that. And that the Sphinx was built after it, and the Sphinx is now twice as old as they told you that it was. What have they told you that was correct? That you passed your exams and think you know. Who is the student and who is the teacher? It was concluded at the convention of the Geological Society of America held in San Diego, California, that weathering patterns on the Sphinx, which is 36 feet and 240 feet long, were characteristics of a time period that had to have been at least 4,000 years prior to that, and that the pyramids were built even before then. So now they've moved back the time unofficially, because your books still say the same foolishness as they did before, to 11,000 BC and 8,700 BC for the Sphinx. They don't know, and if they do know, they're not telling because it's going to upset your respect for them. About that, might upset it. When you can see that such a fairy tale has gotten over, then when I begin to allude to a possible fairy tale even more pronounced, or as pronounced, it might not take you too far away. Give me the same respect that you have been giving them. When I begin to look at a tale that's going to lead to intrigue, astounding type things, and probably something that in the gut, deeply, you probably thought is. I hate to state that I take a stand now, and members of ASCAP may not like what I'm going to say either. But a lot of people don't like what I say, because I tear down with it, and I do it in a structural way. I say that the pyramids were not built by the Egyptians at all, not those. I say that when they were built, you definitely were not a gleam in anybody's eye. And I say that the geological structure there has changed so heavily since they did it. It was about the only people that seem to know what was happening are the Dogons. Some call it the Dogon.
Yes.
Down there in the other part of Africa, who told you that they lived up there near the Mediterranean, and it wasn't even called the Mediterranean. Who told you, just like the Silures and so, and the Tuaregs, they journeyed down from the north of Africa to the south of Africa because of climate change. And the reason why is because there was not desert area there when they built it, but because of some of the things that this thing generated and the things that happened, it turned into a desert, and deserts always show you two things. Something has happened there in the form of radiation or high ultraviolet energy, or an ocean has now disappeared. Think about what I'm just saying and finding a flaw so far in the content. I'll give you 30 seconds to find the flaw. Charles Heston made a monologue. You go again, laughing. And he stated that they found now that the Sphinx might be Negroid.
Might be what?
He said that after 55 minutes of talking about everything else, and he slipped it in 15 seconds. That the Sphinx, think about it, may have been looking like a Negroid. You got to take that. Wow. Isn't that something? Might have been. Could have asked Napoleon that when he shot 18 shots at the ball off the nose and then dynamited you, because he couldn't stand looking at that. Right? Right. 18 Grenadiers shot after shot after shot till they defaced the nose and nobody could tell who it was. But you can still see. It still gives you Negroid-type features for the Sphinx. What has that got to do with the pyramid? Well, they're both on the same plateau. Some culture had something to say about one and the other, and you didn't find any pharaoh in there, so you don't know who really built it at all, do you? So you might as well guess. And a 240-foot, 36-story tall, 2 million ton monstrosity slab ought to tell you. Why would somebody make something going through all that trouble that looked like somebody that wasn't them? Except some Negroes, amen. Heard that? Oh, thought I see that in. The pyramids, when the first ones were built, all around our earth, were built to balance the earth and stop it from being shunted out of orbit. Not only shunted out of orbit, but maybe breaking the vortex in which our earth bends, and we would have never been born. Some people are sorry about that event, but I'm very happy about that event. There is what is called the straight line theory, a theory that if you take one pyramid wherever you find it on our earth, and you diagnose, honeycomb, architecture, the entire planet Earth, and you look at a straight line from where one pyramid is, you will find another pyramid. Usually, even now, within 3/4 of a mile where that other one is on the other side of the earth, which I had a backward. But if you take that whole thing and you begin to draw it, just imagine a circle with a lot of pyramids all the way around it. Each one on an angle or trajectory close to where the parameter of something else is, maybe 1,000,000 miles, well, 5,000, well, a long distance. If that point happens to be on the bottom of the ocean, there's a pyramid there. Northern Telecom, AT&T knows about this. Did you know that? Another little thing they've snowed you. I'm sorry, they didn't snow you. You didn't know any better. So you said, oh, these people are magnificent. Oh, my God, look what they did. Northern Telecom bounces signals to its orbiting satellite. You know, the last one they had, the one that was watching the sun, you know, it's gone now. Right? Oh, yeah, it's gone. All those billions of your tax dollars, you don't work hard. Anyway, here it is, out here in the Pacific, a blue pyramid. This blue pyramid is utilized by Northern Telecom, Bell Labs, and all the Bells, you know, they're back together again now. They couldn't stand that divorce for too long. Hurt too much. They take millions and billions of dollars and they bounce signals off of this pyramid to an orbiting satellite so they can get telecommunications across the international byways. The point is this, they didn't build it. They found it. You could too. If you get out in the ocean, it's big enough. It's twice the size.